Welcome to the Balanced Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Sherman, fitness coach for burnt out perfectionist. If you're ready to break free from overwhelm, simplify your nutrition, and make fitness finally work for you instead of against you, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into easy strategies to balance your health with your busy life. Let's hustle for balance, not burnout. Grab a seat and let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a very special guest on the podcast. It's actually the first guest that I've ever had on the podcast. And who better for that first guest to be but my own mother. And I'm looking at her, and we always make each other laugh, especially when we're trying to do something really serious, which this isn't that serious, but every time I look at her, she makes me laugh. So she's holding her notes in front of her face right now so that we can both maintain our composure. But today we have my mom on the podcast. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
My mom's name is Lori, and today I wanted to have a little discussion, a little mother-daughter conversation about fitness and what her perception of fitness was like as she was growing up and as she's transitioned through the many stages of her life, from growing up through adulthood and having kids and where she is now. I thought it'd be interesting for us to have a little conversation about what her views on fitness has been, especially as we see a lot in social media now that kind of guides our views of fitness and what's trending and all of that. So just thought it would be fun to have that conversation with her. My dog just rolled off my lap upside down onto the floor. So if you heard a thud, that's what that was. But let's just start from the beginning. So, Mom.
Lindsay.
I know. I know your history, but can you give everyone a brief background? You grew up on a dairy farm. You were one of 5 children.
5, yes.
The youngest of 5.
Yes.
Can you just give everyone like a brief background of kind of how you grew up before we start talking about fitness in your childhood?
Sure. As you said, I grew up on a small dairy farm in a very rural community. 7 in the household, so dinners were always jam-packed around the table. We ate what we grew, so a lot of our food came from dairy cows, some stuff from the garden, though I don't really remember a lot coming out of the garden besides some strawberries and potatoes, rhubarb, that sort of thing. But we were a meat and potatoes kind of family. I hate to say it, but I grew up on steak. I know that kind of sounds a little uppity, but that's what was in our freezer, so that's what we ate.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like, I think that's what a lot of people, it's almost like trending that a lot of people are trying to get back to that. Like, not hobby farming is trending, but like homemaking and like just getting back to like the roots of where food comes from. Yep. But that's kind of just how you grew up naturally.
Correct.
Yeah. So what, if any, was your perception of health and fitness growing up? Like, did you guys really talk about like the healthiness of your food as you ate it, or anything fitness in general?
Well, I mean, we were active, so fitness kind of was part of our daily course. I mean, we would generally wake up in the morning and go to school if it was during the school year. If not, in the summers, we'd wake up and go right into the barn when we came home from school. We would go to the barn, we would do our chores. Most of all of my siblings and myself played at least one sport. So we were active in general. When you're throwing hay bales around and, cleaning up after cows and chasing horses and what have you, you just active. So it really wasn't hey, we need to get off the couch, because sitting on the couch was a rarity. We didn't do it. I know your dad talks a lot about the cartoons he watched, or Saturday morning cartoons. I don't ever remember watching Saturday morning cartoons. So we weren't in the house a lot. We were, out and about doing stuff, swimming in the creek, whatever.
Yeah. So, you weren't really part of a family where they were like, stop playing video games. You need to go be active.
Video games? What were video games?
Yeah. Right. So you were just like naturally active.
Correct.
Kind of. Now, like, do you remember? So you all played sports.
Yep.
You said. Do you remember like any talks? I was gonna say topics. Talks with your siblings, because you only had one brother, so it was mainly girls.
Correct.
In the house. Do you remember any talks with your sisters or anything about like body image or like fitness goals as you were growing up, like outside of sports goals?
No, I think one of my sisters would always tell me that, be happy that you're young and you don't have a stomach right now. And if you ever get a stomach, it's hard to lose it. So don't get one. Was kind of the extent of that. But not really. I mean, we didn't talk about, in schools in general, too. We didn't have that persona of what healthy eating was to fuel ourselves. I mean, we used to, in school, we would say, oh, you got to have that big pasta dinner the night before the game so you had that energy for the next night. That was the big trend then. But that's really, drink your milk, strong bones, healthy teeth, because it was a dairy farm. But it really wasn't something that was a hot topic. I mean, we didn't obviously have social media, so we didn't really have a lot of magazine type things laying around the house either. I mean, we were a family of 7. There wasn't, a lot around that. We would have special treats every now and then. Like if we went grocery shopping with Mom, sometimes we'd get a candy bar, but they were the, exception. It wasn't really anything that you sought out, and we didn't really buy out. I don't remember maybe going to the grocery store or going someplace. We'd stop and get subs on the way home, but we didn't eat out as a family. We didn't do anything. We might have ordered pizza in one night or subs, but that was really the extent of any outside processed foods coming in, other than what we'd buy at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of like how it's sounding like you grew up is like a lot of how people want to get back to.
It's a homesteading type approach.
Yeah, like just more home cooking, more movement in general, less TV. It sounds like you didn't have a lot of TV watching.
No, my dad was a big sports fan, so if he was watching sports, we were all out,
Yeah.
And he watched every sport known to man, so.
Yeah.
We'd have a couple hours of TV here and there, maybe on a Friday, Saturday night in the winter. We'd watch some classics, or my mom was into some, but not generally a lot of time spent doing that.
Yeah. So now as you're looking back on how you grew up and how you guys just naturally kind of lived your life, I mean, it all sounds great. Like it sounds like what people want to get back to now. But is there anything looking back on that you're like, ooh, yeah, we should have been more aware of this or that, or you can see how your perception of something might have changed in terms of the way that you had meals or just went about things in general, fitness-wise?
Well, I think, nutrition-wise, we didn't have a lot of variety. It was a lot of the same old, which it probably leads to why I'm a little bit pickier of an eater. And maybe not as, it's a struggle some days for vegetables because I didn't have them, I didn't try them, or maybe I didn't like, because they were cooked the same way every time. There wasn't that variety. But I think the big thing is we were always, it was the worst part of every meal. We were forced to sit there until our plate was finished. And a lot of times we didn't get to choose what we put on our plate. Mom would put, a heaping spoonful or serving of this or that. And, if you sit there and you look at a vegetable that you don't like to begin with, and then it gets cold or it gets soggy, you probably aren't going to want to go back.
Right.
I remember once my mom challenged my brother to eat pickled beets.
Ew.
And they had a pickled beet eating contest, and he didn't like them either. But he did it because we're a very competitive family. So And I remember, I would never eat pickle beets. Oh my God, they're the worst smelling thing ever.
They say your taste buds are supposed to change every 7 years.
And I do actually, I just recently got into eating beets and putting them in my juice. So yeah, there's a vegetable I swore off, and
I guess it is true then.
it's not too bad. I actually am like, ooh, this is kind of good. So, but yeah, just that whole, you have to eat everything on your plate, not, and then of course, it was cold, and so then it tastes good. So you don't want it anymore.
Yeah, that's actually been a pretty big topic lately that I've seen on social media, which of course you didn't really have the social media for these topics to go around on, but is the whole eating everything on your plate thing, and how it's really not a healthy mindset for us to have. And I'll sometimes catch myself, like, I'll be full during dinner, and then I'm like, well, but I put this extra food on my plate, so I should eat it. When
Right.
really I don't need to, and I'm full. Like, I'm done.
And it was something that I was mindful with you and your brother about too, that I didn't want you guys to have to sit through that, and so we would try, like, you have to take 2 bites of everything. You have to at least try it.
To get us to eat more
Right,
variety.
to have a variety.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I just hated that feeling of I have to eat everything on my plate. Even if you were full, you were being forced. And I get it came from the mindset of not being wasteful. But still, that was kind of, that was a lasting impression on me for sure.
Yeah, I even remember, like, I think some of it, because I got some of that growing up too, but I think some of it also came from, like, school, and maybe it was being around other kids or the lunchroom monitor at school. And I just remember kids always saying to each other, like, kids in Africa would want that food.
Right.
So you need to eat all
You're
the food on your
guilted
plate.
into eating all the food on your
yeah.
plate because you should be happy that you have this food.
Exactly.
So that's a tough mindset. And, I look at it now as, you know what, I can have it for leftovers. I can have it for tomorrow's lunch. In fact, I get really excited when I can't eat all my dinner because now I know what's for lunch
Right.
tomorrow.
It's meal prep.
That's right.
That counts as meal prep. So we talked about, eating everything on your plate. And then you also mentioned some of the variety in eating. Like, so you said your mom basically made things the same way. Like, was there any times where you were ever, like, helping your mom cook, or, like, you got to experiment with food, or did she just kind of handle it and make the same meals all the time? Or what was that kind of dynamic like?
Well, generally, we helped Mom bake. We did a lot, she would teach us to bake. Generally, when it came to if she wasn't there, which farmer's wife, she was there 99% of the time, but if she wasn't there, we would get a list on the fridge or on the stove, and it would say dinner was always at 4:30. It just happened to be we'd eat first and then milk cows after, and it would be at 4:30. Turn on the oven to 350 and put chicken patties in, or she would give us a detailed list of when we started stuff, and it really wasn't like recipes per se. It was mashed potatoes, so all the stuff was pretty done. We weren't adding ingredients, we weren't doing anything like that. We learned to do that through baking, like we'd bake pies and cookies, but as far as the main meals, not so much. She would lay it out, and we would do as told, and then we would put dinner on the table, and
It was like another chore, kind of.
Right, yep.
Yeah. What was grocery shopping like? Who did the grocery shopping?
Well, I was trying to think of that on my way over here tonight, and I was like, I remember going grocery shopping and being like, oh my God, we have such a huge cart.
Like, did she take all 5 kids?
Oh, no.
I just thought of this question.
So there's 10 years between my oldest sister and myself. So I think it depended on, who she wanted to take, who was available. I'd probably go with her a lot. I remember unloading and loading groceries in and out of the car. I don't even really remember putting groceries away, but I'm sure we must have. Maybe we just brought them in and she put them away. I mean, most of the time when you run in a dairy farm and you have 5 kids, the kids are labor, let's face it. So we probably brought the groceries in for her, and then she unpacked them, and we went and did barn chores, or we went and did whatever. She handled most of, the house, the cooking, the cleaning. Yeah, we would do dishes and help her out with that sort of thing, but she didn't do evening barn chores. So we did, and we didn't really wash dishes much either, to be honest. We would help her, but we would eat dinner and then head out to the barn.
Yeah. So she was kind of, I don't know if she was content, but that was her role, was she was doing the dishes
Correct.
and taking care of the house.
Yeah.
One other question before we move on that I just thought of was, how did, you had 7 people in the house because you had 5 kids.
Correct.
How did, snacks work? Were you all just grabbing snacks all the time, or were you not allowed to grab snacks?
No, snacks were heavily regulated.
Yeah.
We probably would have been broke.
Right. That's what I'm
I
thinking.
do remember that one day I'm in my room, because I shared a room with 2 of my sisters, that I found some snacks.
They were contraband snacks.
They were hidden, and I think Mom might have known they were missing. I did not take them, but because they were so heavily regulated, anything that was sweet probably got taken and concealed and hidden, and to be eaten later. And I mean, when you're hiding food, that becomes, that adds to a whole bunch of food issues. So, it really, they weren't, I don't remember having tons of snacks, but I do remember having some in the cupboard, and they were doled out, here and there, but they were treats.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to have some type of regulation when you have 5 kids in the house.
Correct.
But it could create some unhealthy habits at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to transition to kind of young adulthood, and then you kind of the same category, you becoming a young adult and then transitioning into motherhood, and how your views may or may not have started to shift during that time. So do you remember a time where you first kind of started to become more aware of fitness and nutrition, or just started to pay more attention to it?
I think in college it definitely started to have some impact. I think too, and nothing against my parents, they did the job that they did. But when you get to college and all of a sudden you have all these choices, I think that might be why people put on the freshman 15. They get out of the house and they can eat anything they want. I don't think I did, but that's when I really started seeing, we had a gym at college. And I'm like, maybe getting out and getting some walks, because when you're used to such an active lifestyle at home, and then you go from sitting in a dorm to classes, that definitely was like, okay, I need to get out more. I just felt sluggish because I wasn't as active.
Well, and you grew up playing sports.
Right.
Did you play sports in college?
I did not.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to see me play sports in college. I would have never gotten a college scholarship for sports, that's for sure.
Yeah, so you really went from being super, super active to
living
being
in a small
college.
dorm room, and yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of freedom there.
And a lot of different food options in the dining hall, different, even though your father will tell you that I had the same thing every day for lunch because that was, a routine, so food was more of a routine. I wanted to be controlled in that because I didn't want to overindulge, because I wasn't ever allowed to. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. I don't want to go the opposite way, So there was definitely some variety, but again, I wasn't eating the variety of fruits and vegetables that I should have been, which is something that, as you know, is still something that I struggle with.
Yeah. Did you ever think about your body any differently in college, or were you still kind of not really, you were just happy with how you felt and looked throughout college, even though you had more of that freedom and maybe a little bit of change in how your body looked?
I think for the most part, we all have things that we're not super let me wear a bikini anytime soon. But, it was what it was. I never really had any I don't like my body. I don't like my body, body shaming or anything like that. It was just, this is what you get has kind of been always my take. And then as I progressed into, married life, and having you guys, I think it became the ever-ending question of what's for dinner. You know, that's a stressful thing, but your father is very much, he came from a very much veggie. They had a lot of variety. So kind of merging those two, and trying to put forth the best effort when I had kids. Like, I might not like carrots, but I want them to not like carrots because they don't like carrots, but not because I don't like carrots. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, were you going to say something? Did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you kind of just were, I mean, you weren't really thinking about it too much, probably until you had kids then.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you had kids, like, especially, like, after you have the first one, Lindsay, and you realize what
That's
they do to
me.
your body, then you're like, okay, now, you know, I think I was thinking about it a little bit before I had you, you know, trying to be active, but after you have your first kid, you're like, oh, okay, now I need to lose the baby weight. I mean, I didn't gain a ton, thankfully, but in trying to stay healthy because you want to have the energy to deal with your kids. And in between my 2 pregnancies, I did, you know, gain more weight than I wanted to. You know, you kind of put the focus on the kids, so that became, you know, more stress, more probably quicker meals because Lindsay liked to cry anytime we sat down for dinner, as every child out there I think does. So, you know, and I struggled a little bit with that in between the 2 pregnancies, and then when I had, you know, your brother, it was again lose the weight, get back in shape, but not really until probably you guys were middle school that I was like, oh, okay, like now what's a workout? What's a
Do you think that social media played? I feel like social media really wasn't that much of a thing, maybe until we were like middle school age. So you kind of had like 2 things going on at the same time.
Right. Well, and like we would say, okay, what's for dinner? And it'd be like, I don't know, what's in the cookbook? You know, we weren't Pinteresting. I'm making myself feel old here, but we weren't Pinteresting.
I'm not trying to call you old, but there wasn't like a lot of like there wasn't Instagram and TikTok.
Oh,
and
absolutely not.
Pinterest, like
You
there
didn't
wasn't
go
the things-
online and look
yeah.
up recipes. You were like, oh, okay, well, we don't have this ingredient. There was no like, what's a substitute unless the cookbook had it. You know, that was kind of my early
I don't
years.
think I would have survived.
You would not have survived. But, you know, you looked it up in the cookbook. Oh, what's a substitute for this? Now you type it into your phone. So,
Right.
and now I think it might even be harder to plan meals because now you're like, oh, I got the World Wide Web. I can come up with anything. But then you get lost down that World Wide Web of what can I come up with?
Yeah, now it's like what's the word? Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, I was going to say information overload. Yeah.
That too. Yeah, there's like way too much to look at now.
And all these apps are supposed to help us. And, you know, I think sometimes they complicate things, but...
Yeah, I found that a good rule of thumb. Like when I first started to get on social media, I remember I was 16 was when I got Facebook. And then I didn't get Instagram or really anything else for a little while. Probably YouTube was the next thing. That was where I started to find fitness influencers. And like I've talked about it on here before, but people like Whitney Simmons, people like Nikki Blacketer. You might not. You know who Whitney Simmons is.
Yeah, I remember watching a lot of videos of her with you.
So that's like where I started to notice things and start to think about things. But I've learned over time, especially if you have a certain goal, it's almost better to like latch on to 2 or 3 people who you really look up to and who you feel are trustworthy, because if you start following every single fitness coach and influencer and dietitian and nutritionist out there, I mean, there's a million ways to do things right.
Right.
You know? And just because 2 people have different methods, it doesn't mean that neither of them can work.
Correct.
But if you start overloading yourself with all these different people, you're just going to be stuck.
Right. Well, and I think your voice gets lost in that too. You know, like I work with, you know, a couple different people, as you know. You have been my coach, even though you know, I'm not the best student. But
it's hard to coach, you know, your
You say
family.
it's hard to coach your parent.
It's hard to coach your parent, okay? It's hard to say to your parent, you need to do this.
Now you know how it felt being a mother. It's hard to coach a child too.
Yeah.
But, I think too, like one of my mentors always said that surround yourself with the people you want to be. Or, if you want to bike, 100 miles, surround yourself with people who bike 100 miles. Don't surround yourself with people who sit at the bar, so.
I don't want to cut you off.
No.
I actually heard a really interesting fact the other day.
Okay, shoot.
And I'm not going to quote it exactly correct. So
of course not.
Nobody come after me and fact check this. But I'll give you the gist of the fact that I heard. And it was, if you walk into a room and you sit next to somebody who is not a very successful person,
Okay.
I think they used it in terms of like school. So if you walk into a room and you sit next to someone who's failing, that will rub off on you by it was a large percentage. Like
Okay, makes sense.
50% of that will rub off on you. But then if you walk into a room and you sit next to someone who's being successful, a percentage will rub off on you from that successful person. But I think the percentage of failure of sitting next to the failing person was bigger.
Oh, probably.
So it was even more impactful if you're, like if we're talking about fitness now, if you're hanging around with people, and there's nothing wrong with drinking, but for an example, if you're hanging around with people who are drinking every weekend, who are not going to the gym, it's just crazy that percentage that's going to rub off on you is even greater.
Right.
Well,
think about it.
Yeah.
If you, and we just had this conversation at work the other day. I pointed out that we were being a little salty, a little negative the other day at work, and
I like how salty's still going around.
we were a little being a little sassy. We were kind of all in a bad mood, and we were like, one of my coworkers walked in. He said, "You know what? I was in a good mood until I walked in here." And I'm like, "See, that just proves if we were in a positive mood and we were upbeat, we lift the people up around us. If we're negative, it's very easy to get sucked into that."
Yeah.
And so that kind of takes the energy out of the room. So we try to joke around a lot about that. I don't know why we were being salty. I don't even remember, but probably started off as a joke and then went downhill. But, that's what they say, too. If somebody complains about something, they're going to spread that complaint and that negativity further than a positive.
It's just like the news, and I will not get into politics on this podcast, but most of the news you see is negative for a reason. That's
right.
What spreads. That's what people want to talk about.
People want to complain.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to talk about the good, happy
Have you
stories.
ever tried to be happy and walk into a room with grumpy people? They try to shut you down fast.
Yeah, misery loves company.
That's true.
And I mean, we've all been there. We've all had our moments where we're like, take your butterflies and rainbows out of here.
Right.
I want to be upset right now. But yeah, who you surround yourself with, I think, is really important.
It is very, very important. And I mean, I'm very fortunate in my life to, not only have you as a fitness coach and nutrition, but, our good friend also has a wellness program. So I feel like, and we have a good friend who's a nurse. So we have a lot of good resources in our life. We're very fortunate and very, very positive group. So when one of us is down, we have that ability to reach out. And I think that's important because we're all going to struggle at times.
Yeah.
And we need those other people to say, hey, I see you're struggling. Either get over it or what can we do to help you?
Right. Yeah, that was one of the tips I gave. It was either my last podcast or the one before that. And one of the biggest tips I gave was to find somebody who can support you and hold you accountable. Not someone who's going to, tear you down when you don't show up.
Right.
But who's going to kind of be that second eye on things and that second perspective to give you advice in a way that they know that you'll receive it.
Correct.
That can be constructive, that can be supportive, finding the right type of support people.
Right. And I think that's something that growing up, there was 5 of us. We were very, very competitive. We were not good at building each other up. We were more competitive with each other. And me being the baby of the family, apparently had the easiest lifestyle of anybody. I was apparently spoiled. Mom and Dad gave me everything. Maybe they just gave up by number 5 and said, whatever. I don't remember it that way. But, I think that's important. And I think that's something you and I have, too, is when I do something, I say, hey, this is my intention. This is what I'm going to do. And Lindsay and I, for those of you who don't know, talk every day.
Yep.
And we will check in on each other and say, hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm not feeling good. And one of the first things we say to each other a lot of times is, I don't feel like working out today. Well, you know what? You're going to get dressed and you're going to get on that treadmill, or you're going to do 5 minutes. And if you don't feel like doing it after 5 minutes,
Yeah.
then you're done. But
We can't do that every day.
no.
Yeah.
But it's
You
one of
went for
those
it.
things that, you know, generally when you get dressed and you do 5 minutes, you're going to do your workout.
Yeah, and let me tell you, after this woman does her workout, she is like a freaking Energizer bunny.
Oh, yes.
She's like running around the house. That's where I get my furniture rearranging from. I've had people comment on my Instagram, and my past business coach actually commented one day, and she goes, I feel like you're always rearranging your house.
Well,
and
you know-
that's just the times I share it on Instagram.
You know, if you're going to clean, you might also give yourself a reward and giving yourself a new layout. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to move the furniture to clean, you might as well just move it.
It's the dopamine hit, too.
It is.
It just feels nice. Have a little change up.
I'm still riding yesterday's workout feeling.
Yeah.
I'm pumped here.
I
so.
still have to show you my gym rearranging while you're here. Just rearranged it last weekend. I'm like, and every time it gets better. I convince myself every time this is the best it's ever been. This is the optimal layout. But,
See, and you
yeah.
grew up where you had exercise equipment and stuff at home. We did not. I mean, we
Yeah.
had bales of hay,
Yeah.
you know, but that's definitely something that's changed. You know, they're readily available in everybody's house. I mean, you might have seen an exercise bike or a treadmill here or there, but I don't remember going over to any of my friends' house and saying, oh, look, your parents work out? No, it just...
And what would you have thought, just out of curiosity? Like, what do you think you would have thought if you
I
went
probably
to a
would have
friend's
tested
house?
them out and see how fast I could go.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Probably would have dropped a dumbbell on my toe, or you know,
Right.
we did have. So in gym, we played a lot of sports. More, I would say, more than you guys do now. But we cross country ski for Pete's sake.
That's cool.
We would do indoor soccer in a small gym. So you also had the option of getting nailed in the face if you weren't quick enough. You know, none of these
Yeah.
long distance far corners.
I think even, like, dodgeball is outlawed
Oh,
now.
we square dance for Pete's sake, and I'm not that old. That was the end of it. But we had a trampoline, you know, like we would
At
do
school?
At school. They would bring in a trampoline, and we would have. I mean, it was like half a gym,
Wow.
and you would take turns jumping. Like, we were definitely more creative, I think, in our sports. But I think that too inspired me to try something new. You know.
And you were from, like, a small town and
Yep.
a pretty small school. It wasn't, like, I don't want people to think you went to, like, a big fancy school that had a lot of sports.
We had 32 people
Yeah.
in my graduating class. Very small school. We just did, I mean, I think, and for an age where they didn't have a lot of YouTube or videos to watch, the gym teachers were, sorry, PE teachers now, but gym teachers back then were very creative in the activities, you know?
Yeah, I feel like now, or, like, when I was in school, they just wanted you to not kill each other.
You get like, what, you switch sports every season, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
this is the sport we're doing for the whole season.
Yeah.
We would switch it up all the time, you know? We used to play cricket.
Yeah, we didn't play cricket.
I never got the hang of that. I felt like it was just a danger to others. But, you know,
What's that thing that's super big right now? It's not
Pickleball.
Pickleball. People are obsessed with pickleball. Like,
I think I
retired
could get
people,
into pickleball. I
I-
love racquetball.
From what I hear, you're like, if you get into pickleball, you're like, it's like a cult.
Yeah.
Like, you're all into pickleball.
Well, where we used to work, it was waiting lists to get into to play there, you know?
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you remember by chance, like, when because you said you didn't really grow up with workout equipment, so you didn't really have any workout equipment in your house until you were, like, in your own house as an adult.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think not to say that I think probably one of the first pieces, I was thinking about this, the first piece of exercise equipment I got was one of those ab roller thingies that you're going to kill yourself on. You know, and probably maybe a yoga mat or something like that. But we were doing a lot of, you know, body weight stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but it gets boring.
And you had, like, you didn't go to YouTube. You had like DVDs.
Yeah.
Like you were buying
oh,
DVDs.
yeah. See, my favorite workout. What's his name? Bobby?
Shaun T? No.
No. But
We
before.
did do some Shaun T.
We did do some Shaun T. He was the
I always forget his
the
name.
boxing guy. Tybo.
Oh.
That was probably my first follow it religiously, love Tybo. And probably stems from why I like to kickbox now.
So did you like see that on like a TV commercial?
It
or
was
something?
probably one of those, 1995, order it, call in. Or maybe
3 payments of $5.99. Well,
I
they'd
do-
always be like, it can be yours for only 7 payments of
Right.
$5.99.
I don't remember where the Tybo, but I had the whole set. I really missed that set. I don't know what happened to it, but I did like that. That was a good workout.
I saw someone doing a Shaun T. We had Shaun T too that you bought.
I do like my
And
Shaun T.
I tried that out when I was like a teenager, and I saw someone doing it on Instagram the other day, and I was like, I know that dance. That was the only dance I learned.
See, you got me Zumba, and oh my gosh, remember that? That was not good. I am not a dancer. I feel like I line danced a lot in college. That was my workout in college. I did a lot of line dancing. Got a good workout there. Got my cardio in. I cannot do Zumba.
I think line dancing's coming back.
I would love to go line dancing
Yeah,
again.
a friend of mine just went line dancing at a local bar, and I'm like, whoa, that's cool. But
Yes.
Zumba's another thing.
No, there's got to be rhythm involved, and I don't know why
I went
don't
to a
get no.
Zumba class one time.
I watched you. That was hilarious.
Yeah, she was at the gym and she could see me through the window. And my friend and I went to the class together because we thought it would be a good time. And she's probably listening to this now.
It was a good time.
It was a good time for the people outside the class because they had a substitute teacher that day also. So it wasn't even like their normal teacher. So this lady came in from another local affiliated gym, and I'm sure she seemed great to the people that knew how to do Zumba.
Lindsay has no rhythm. We're just going to go with that.
No, I don't. I like to think I do at a wedding after I've had a few drinks, but you can probably attest it probably doesn't exist then either.
No. It does not.
Okay, so
I'm
you've
really
said
surprised
that.
nobody from the Zumba class walked out hurt. That was
Listen, I stayed far away and I hardly moved at all because I didn't know which direction to even begin moving in.
so we got to share back in Lindsay's childhood. Lindsay used to be the most uncoordinated person I know. She used
I
to
still
walk into
am.
doors, so we took her to tap and ballet. She had a good time.
Baton twirling, I heard
She only almost broke her nose with that.
Boot Scoot and Boogie on the radio today, and
There
I
you
had
go.
to tell the person I was with that I did a baton twirling routine. Boot
Yes.
Scoot and Boogie. I was very proud of it.
So Lindsay was more not about fitness; it was about coordination.
Yeah, and I was never. This is about you, not about me. But we can talk about me for a minute. I wouldn't have ever considered myself like an athlete kid. Like I did sports.
Right.
I did basketball. I did swimming for one season. I liked to flip around and do gymnastics in the backyard. But I was never like the fastest like starting player athlete kid.
Oh, same, 100% here. I mean, I did, start most of my high school basketball career, but I will say that's because we only had 7 people on the team.
Well, hard to sit on the bench with only 7.
But
They didn't need to know that.
we used to run those. Well, I don't know if we can use the word anymore. Suicides.
Yeah, sprints.
Wind sprints. So
Yes.
we used to run those, and I was definitely this last kid through.
I was always last.
We would always joke that was the the farmers' kids were always last, but we were always there to the end because we had endurance.
Well, I feel like I was smart because I didn't know how many of those wind sprints we were about to do. So I'm trying to hold my energy.
That's right.
And I also just still wasn't the fastest on the
So
team.
I mean, yes, we played sports, but I was not by any means an athlete. We played basketball. We played basketball at the home court, but it was more about being out and doing stuff than it was, really winning any trophies or anything like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back, into the past, a question that I had written down was if you could go back and give your younger self, and I mean, pick which younger self. I mean, I don't really think, like, as a kid, you would probably change anything.
No, I think probably definitely trying. There wasn't readily available vegetables and different things like that, but maybe as a young adult, maybe trying more vegetables, trying to get into that because that is something that now I finally like and enjoy. I probably could have had a lot more years of enjoying them, and just adding the variety. I think that's the mindset I have now. That hey, you know what? Especially if I go out to eat, you always get the same thing. Well, you know what? If I go out to eat, what's the difference of trying something, maybe finding something I like now, taking that chance, being a little more risk taking in the food.
Yeah. So do you think that you have a more positive outlook now on fitness and nutrition versus maybe when you were like an early adult or when we were younger?
I think so. I think it's been one of those things that now I've started to, I mean, it's hard for us all to do, but to put myself first, which is really easy when both of the kids are out of the house. You know what I mean? Like,
They're
but
empty nesters.
empty
now.
nesters is the best way to be. I love my kids. They can come
Why?
visit anytime.
Why did you only want 2 kids after having?
Well,
was it after having 5 in a family? Was that too much?
Well, your father said to me after having you that we were going to go for another one. And I said, absolutely, that's fine. I wanted at least 2. And then after having Zach, we said, you know what? You got one of each. You're good to go.
Because I think a lot of families, I see a trend like where if you have, like Brandon, he has 3 siblings. He wants, Brandon's my husband, by the way. He wants at least like 3 kids. Like I see a trend
at least
where,
he's down from the dozen he wanted originally.
Well, he would take a dozen, which is a whole other topic. But I see like a trend where if you seem to come from a bigger family, you almost usually want more kids. Would you?
I would
agree?
say that I would have been happy with 2 or 3. But I was also happy with the 2 that I had. I mean, I was glad to get a boy or girl. Now, if
we were both perfect.
If your brother was a girl, I probably would have said, all right, let's try for, a boy, or vice versa, if you had come out that way. But I was really happy with the combo. I mean, I guess I was just good with 2. We had what we wanted, and
you were happy with that.
yeah, you guys were close enough in age where you should have gotten along, and
We get along most of the time.
yeah, most of the time.
We get along pretty good now that we're adults.
Yeah.
So if you were to talk to, or I guess if you were to think about my generation, what do you do you notice anything particular that stands out to you about the way that my generation kind of goes about health and fitness that's maybe different from how you were when you were 25?
I think you guys are more for the instant fix. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go to the gym for a week, and if I'm not buff by then, I'm out.
Yeah.
I think that, and that's probably to my generation. They want that insta fix, but I think, you guys are also the food. You guys have, you can have food delivered anywhere, and I think that's a tough thing. I still have never done a DoorDash.
You don't want to. It's expensive.
But that's just, the instant gratification that you guys get now, I think is a lot different.
I think that comes with more social media being
Absolutely.
out there too. Like we all, my husband and I and mom and dad went to a concert this past weekend, and on the way home we were listening to different songs, different country music songs, and we started to have questions pop up like, oh, is this person like still alive, or how many times has this person been married, or we think this person was married to so and so, or just questions like that. And Brandon and I are in the back seat Googling it because we got to know right away. where I made a joke like, what did you guys used to do? Just ponder these questions until somebody told you the answer at some point?
She's making us sound old. We are not even, my
No.
husband's not even 50, and I'm several years from 50, so we're not as old as she thinks we are.
And I don't call my parents old. My brother likes to pick on
Your brother
guys'
has been
age.
calling me old since probably the first word out of his mouth.
Exactly.
Old and short.
Yeah, I try not to do that because I don't really think you guys are old. But I did think it was funny. Like, at this point, my attention span wouldn't remember the question long enough for me to ask somebody else because I'm just so used to Googling it immediately.
Well, how many screenshots do I have on my phone of things I'm going to remember to do later?
Yeah, do you ever go back and look at them, though?
Sometimes, but not really.
Yeah.
I'm saying sometimes to make myself feel better.
About your collection.
Yes.
And then when your phone starts to run out of storage and you go through all your screenshots and you're like, oh, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to remember.
Yep.
So I guess the last thing I want to ask you is for anybody listening to this podcast, she's making fun of the way I'm moving my head. My podcast, I looked at my demographics the other day. They're pretty much 20 to 30-year-olds is my 20 to 30-year-old females. We have no male listeners, which is fine. Kick them out. 20 to 30-year-old females. There's some younger, some older, but that's the main demographic. If you could give that group of women any advice from, I won't say your years of knowledge because I don't want to make you sound old.
Because I was just there a few years ago.
Yeah, because you were just there a few years ago. So for someone who's, about 5 years older, I don't know how that was possible with me being 25, but...
I had you when I was young.
Right. What kind of advice would you give to that group of women? And this could apply if you're a little younger, if you're a little older, this could also apply to you. We're not excluding you. What advice would you give to that group of women?
I think probably the biggest piece of advice I could give is take the time to put yourself first and don't feel like that's being selfish. Mm-hmm. And I think we all need to remember that because, I always tell myself when I'm getting stressed like this, you have the airplane analogy. If you don't put your life, your oxygen mask on first, you can't save or help anybody else. And we feel guilty as women for putting ourselves first, and I hate even to say put ourselves first, but take that time to take care of yourself.
It's like basic needs.
Yeah, take that time to take care of yourself. If you're eating healthy, if you're exercising, you're also setting a great example for whether it's your kids or, your friends, and find yourself a support team. It doesn't have to be large by any means. But find that person that you can go to, and no matter how bad of a day you're having, they'll listen to you, and they won't necessarily try to fix it, but they'll be there and supportive of you. But you need to be the best you, and the only way you can do that is by giving yourself some grace and patience and putting yourself first.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice. And if you are a listener of mine and you follow me on social media, you'll know I'm huge on avoiding that burnout and coming from a place where I was super, super burnt
A lot of
out.
self-care. You need self-care.
Yes, you need that, definitely. So is there any final, are there any final thoughts or stories, anything that you'd like to share before we kind of wrap up today?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything, It's okay. We're not going to be perfect. Be okay with the imperfections. I know I have definitely tried different things, tried different diets. I think we're all guilty of that. Tried different workouts. Tried to find something that gave me that after workout buzz. Because of physically I had to switch from my biking outdoors. But be okay with trying new things and don't look them as failures, but look at them as stepping stones because you're not starting over. You're just starting from where you left off.
Yeah. And I should ask you, since we're talking about health and fitness, what are you kind of enjoying and loving doing now in terms of health and fitness?
I am a big juicer right now.
Oh.
I do not like to chew a lot of vegetables. I don't like hard, textury stuff, so I have been getting into juicing, which has really been great for some joint pain. Don't think I've ever consumed as many fruits and vegetables in my life as I do right now. And I know people are anti-juicing. I am not juicing like full juicing. I do eat a regular diet, but I do have, a good juice with either my lunch or my breakfast. I do like lifting weights, but I've been kind of getting back into the kickboxing a little bit.
Okay.
I'm still struggling to find that.
She's a feisty lady.
I still am trying to find that replacement. I used to bike a lot outdoors and bike around the Finger Lakes. I love that adrenaline rush, and I haven't quite found it. But those roads out there, folks, are scary.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find, and my back doesn't really like the bike as much, but I'm trying to find that replacement. Getting back into the routine of stuff. I do not like meal planning, so that's my next hurdle to get over. What's for dinner? That's the hardest question as an adult. Mm-hmm. So if you can find a good place to figure out meal planning and really get that, that'll save you a lot of frustration in your life.
Yeah.
And let Lindsay know, because I'd love to know how you meal plan without stress. So.
Yeah, we can talk about that some more. I actually just put out a free meal planning freebie. Didn't even plan to plug it in the podcast, but I put out a free meal planning freebie on my Instagram this week. So meal planning is something I've fallen in love with lately. So
you do a very good job at it. You inspire me.
Maybe we have to have some chats and brainstorming around that. But, I think that basically wraps up what I wanted to ask you today. Have you enjoyed your first podcast experience? She's getting a little punchy now.
I have. It has been a good time.
We gotta, you gotta start somewhere.
That's right.
So I don't think I've scared her away.
No, I hope we haven't put your listeners to sleep, but
This was a little bit of a longer one, but maybe you're listening at work or driving in your car, or I don't know.
Just need some entertainment for the day.
Yeah, I like to listen while I do chores. So if you're still here, or maybe you've left and came back and finished it a second time, thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed listening to my mom and I have a conversation back and forth, definitely let me know. Like this podcast, leave me a comment on here, or hit me up over on Instagram. Let me know what you thought of it. If you have any other questions you might want to hear from her, or any other topics that this has brought up for you, let me know, because I'm always looking to record resources and put things out there that serve you and help you out. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, kid.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right. So with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Balanced Hustle podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to leave a review or share with someone who needs a little extra balance in their hustle. For more tips, tools, and resources to help you reclaim your energy and build the strong, vibrant life you deserve, follow me on Instagram at LindsaySherman_fitness, and don't forget to subscribe here so you don't miss a single episode. Until